Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar where I am going to be having a wonderful interview with Paul Shires, better known in the industry as Tradeshark. Good afternoon to you, Paul.
Hi, everyone.
So what we're going to be doing is I've just got a load of questions here that I've had built up for probably about 11 years now that we're going to fire in at Paul. We've known each other, I think, mate, since when Racing Traders first launched BetTrader, they launched a forum with it. Yeah. And a load of us went and joined the forum. And I'm pretty certain that that's where I met you the first week that started. The Tradeshark popped up and I was the badger, and we just sort of met from there, didn't we?
Yeah, I don't think I was there at the start. You seemed to be already established when I was there. It was probably 2008, end of 2008 when I started.
Yeah, that'd be right. So that means we've sort of known each other for 12 years now, and we've had a lot of conversations over the years about different things.
All in text.
But this is our first sort of face-to-face and our first chat. And I've followed your career with a lot of interest because tennis is something that I've just never sort of been able to get to grips with for reasons that will become apparent during the interview. But just to get us started, mate, if you want to tell the guys a little bit about your background and how you first came across Betfair.
Sure. I'm from Bradford, brought up around Bradford. As you can probably tell from the accent, I haven't lost it yet. I don't know when I got a Betfair account. I'd had it quite a while for like the odd 20 quid bet on football or whatever. Didn't really know what I was doing, just something to spice up the games on a Saturday. And then I was looking for just a way to make a bit of extra money. I had 20 years in food retail, and that doesn't pay well at all. And I found an interview or an article from Adam Todd, who was, I think, did he found Racing Traders?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he built BetTrader and founded Racing Traders. Yeah.
And I read about how he was traveling around the world, starting with a 200 quid bank, doing the pre-race horses. That sparked my interest. I had a bit of a go at it. It was like a real eureka moment the first time I used the tick offset tool to make 23p or something. But because I was working full time, I couldn't trade the horses. So it's, simple as that. I was working at that time in a customer service office for a large print firm. So I was sat at a computer all day, but obviously they block anything to do with betting. But I did find a little way around it. There was something back then called Betfair Lite that wasn't blocked by the company's servers. But obviously that's no good for doing the horses.
No.
I've always played a lot of sport, tennis being one of them. And it seemed to be that tennis had the most money in, not compared to the horses, not compared to the football, but after that. And I found that it was something that I could trade at work. And so I stuck with that, really. I had an interest in tennis anyway, which helped.
Yeah, so you've found Betfair and you've had a crack at the racing. Did you do anything at all? You said you had a little sort of go at the football, bit of a mess around on the Saturday. Have you looked at cricket or any other sports at that stage, or you just
no, none of that? I had no idea about Betfair trading.
Right.
And even when I started on the tennis, it must have taken me 2 years before I was comfortable laying, because all I was doing was picking a player that I thought would win, and hedge when they broke or won the set. That was it. That's all I was doing to start with.
Yeah. So you've run the Tradeshark Tennis site for what's got to be around 10 years now.
10 years, yeah.
What gave you the idea to start that, and what does it involve?
Initially, as you say, we were on the forum, and I was getting pretty frustrated that no one was really telling you unless you wanted to pay money. I think the only system as such around at the time was Tennis Trading League. Some of you who've been around a while might remember Patrick with his huge hand stuck to the tree. If anybody who's seen that photo will know what I'm talking about. But I didn't really want to pay anybody for it. So I'd learned and tried things by trial and error. And was maybe lucky that a lot of it just worked. I was making money pretty much straight away. And at that time, not many people were trading the tennis, certainly not in the forum, and they were asking questions. So rather than type out the answers every 2 minutes, I thought, well, I'll put it together in a guide. And the idea was to get people to the same stage that I was at.
Right.
That was it. I thought it's got a 6-month shelf life. As soon as people that are interested have bought it, that'll be it. It'll die a death.
Yeah.
And 10 years later, I'm still going.
Yeah, it's pretty well the same for me, but we'll get to that. So can you just explain before we get into a lot of other stuff, what deal the members get when they sign up to buy the tennis guide? Because you do things quite differently to me. I believe that once you get it, you're like a member for life. That's sort of it. Whereas I run a more monthly thing and people sort of come and go and drop in and out, and we run Telegram rooms and stuff. But what do your members get?
It's a combination. The guide itself is a one payment lifetime membership. For that there's 10 strategies in there. I noticed one of the questions in there, is it all just text? It isn't. It's a mixture of text and videos. Obviously the bulk of and there's a lot of information. It's not just strategies. There's the information that you need to start up trading on Betfair, specifically obviously for tennis. And there's videos that show a little bit more detail about how to use the actual strategies. There's also something that came on, I think it's 4 or 5 years I've been doing that now, the trading tips email, where I do the research for every main tour tennis match each day, 7 days a week. And I send out information and trading advice on every match.
Wow.
I don't think anybody does that. Certainly not quite the same as I do. And you can understand why. Because if you're in the first round of a slam, you're looking at 64 matches in a day, which is a lot to preview and send out and still find time to trade yourself.
It's a massive amount of work. So my next question was sort of how hands-on are you? Do you trade live with your group, or do you just advise the trades as you've said? Do you research them, send them out, and then you do your own thing, or are you trading live with them and just manage your own positions? Because I imagine with the huge volatility in tennis, it could be hard to talk to a group of really eager followers that want all this information whilst trying to manage sizable positions that can swing 30 ticks or so on a point, especially when we're getting down near the end of the match. It'd be like me trying to talk to my members during the running of a horse race.
Mm-hmm. I actually, literally yesterday, I found some of the old webinars that I used to do, where I used to do exactly that. I'd share my screen and people would follow my trades. Now, what I did explain to them at the time was, because there's a slight delay, you're not going to get the same prices that I do. You're going to miss out. So please use it as a training exercise rather than getting some free money. Just following my trades. Of course, people don't listen to that. They think, well, I can get some money here. So they start using stakes bigger than they normally would. They then don't get their trade. So you might have 30 people in there watching, and you've got one idiot who will not get it, or will jump in at a different price, or just get himself confused, and then just takes over the whole room, demanding that you get him out of the situation.
Yeah.
So I mean it's the same. I mean, so often in life it happens, isn't it? One person spoils it for everybody else.
Yeah.
So I persevered with that for a little bit, but it just didn't work. It didn't, and also because, as you say, the distraction, the software that I used slowed my PC down as well. So I was using reduced stakes.
Yeah.
It just didn't work out.
Yeah.
Trades were fairly successful. Those trades will be going on to YouTube shortly with a new commentary on as well, which should be.
Oh, that's great. Well, when you've done that,
but generally no. We've got a Skype room, and everybody's allowed in there and shares advice, shares tips. So it's not exactly back at this price, or I'll try and explain my thought process before we get to the point of having to enter. It's more a teaching process. I want people to be self-sufficient rather than reliant on me.
Yeah, sure.
If they're reliant on me and I'm not there, they're screwed. What are they going to do?
Yeah.
I'd rather teach a man to fish one.
That's exactly it. You try. That's what I'm doing with the in-running guide. I've got the in-running guide, and then I have a Telegram room where they can all come in, and I'm with them there every day, but they all do their own things during the week, but they learn from other people. They can't just sit and watch and wait for what I do. Because a lot of people have asked me to do live trading webinars, and I've said I'd love to do them, and I've tried them, but if you try using this software during a race, and then you've got Bet Trader running.
Yeah.
Even with a top quality Mac, Bet Trader slows down so much that the prices are just all different. And then you're trying to watch a horse race, commentate on it, say what you're doing. It just become a nightmare.
Yeah,
so I couldn't do it. So how do you find the liquidity in tennis these days? Getting bigger, or?
I think it's pretty static. And I've been going through some of the old videos that I've done from sort of 2014, 2015, and recording an up-to-date commentary on what I would do differently now, etc. And looking at the markets and the liquidity, there's not a lot of difference. It's
right.
It's pretty much the same.
Because in the horse racing, when we, Racing Traders started and we were looking at the horse racing markets back then, every single race, even a maiden at Lingfield was having £1 million traded on it before the race. But these days, you're lucky to get 300,000 before a race.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily looking at the final matched amount. I'm talking about point by point. Is the money going into the market that allows you to get out? I'm not seeing massive gaps between the prices.
Okay. So why do you think tennis has become one of the most popular sports to trade? Like, you look at things like, obviously, liquidity, the volatility, the length of the match is good. There's always an outcome. You're never going to get a draw or anything like cricket, and it's only a two-way market, etc. But why do you think it's so popular?
A lot of people start off similar to me, start with the football.
Yep.
More people follow football, I would imagine, than most other things. In terms of betting, a lot of people start with the horses. I've never understood why. It always must seem like the hardest thing to predict was a horse race.
They're definitely the hardest thing to do. It's by far the hardest to do, yet everyone wants to start there.
Yeah, I suppose you start with what you're familiar with. And what people find is, and certainly what I found was, tennis is more controllable. The market doesn't get suspended every 2 minutes like it does in football. You haven't got idiots coming along with, a huge bank that can move the price as they can in the horse markets. And really, you've got, if nothing's happening on court, the price is stable. And you can initially back a particular player, and if it looks like it's not going the right way, you've got the chance to manage that position and still come out with a profit at the end. So,
speaking of that, how do you focus mainly on the men's or the women's matches? I guess I'm asking about the volatility, as I guess most men's matches go as predicted. You often see a lot of short-priced favourites, whereas the women's, to me, at the limited time I look at it, the women's, to me, is just heart attack material. It seems there's a break every second game. But generally, for what I look at, the Djokovic's, the Murrays, the Federers, the Nadals, they tend to win their matches. But how do you find it?
I started off maybe for that reason initially on the men's. I would concentrate on them because I had no real concept when I started of value, to be honest. I was just looking for a price that started maybe above 1.7, and I thought they looked okay. I don't remember how I used to research matches, if I researched at all. So yeah, they were more reliable. And one of the strategies that I came up with that I've laughed about when I've redone the commentary for the members pages is wait for a player to break and then back them, which now, like, I was watching the video, I'm like, what are you doing? You're joking? Yeah. What are you doing? There's no value there.
You're basically, you're waiting the price has dropped because they've just broken.
Because they've gone ahead. So I'm then expecting them to go ahead and win. And that's what I started. I've just nothing to base it on.
Yep.
Obviously, you wouldn't do that these days.
No, you're getting the worst value.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you find Grand Slams harder or easier to trade?
I think the first two rounds are harder purely because there's so many matches on at once. And I can remember the first 2-3 slams that I traded, I would sit watching all the scores flashing in front of me, didn't want to miss an opportunity. And I realised after 2 or 3 hours, I'd done nothing. You just get mesmerised by it and you think, oh, I don't want to miss that one, but that one looks like it's going the right way. I'm going to do that one. And you think, well, I haven't done anything here.
Right. It's a bit like that on the football on a Saturday afternoon. You've got all the Premier League at 3:00 Saturday. You've got 300 games to pick from, and you're looking all over the shop just going, where do I start? You don't want to miss an opportunity, but you've really just got to do your research and focus in on a couple of those games and go.
What you also get in the first 2 rounds is most of the matches. This actually makes it easier once you realise what's going on. Most of the matches are one-sided.
Well, that's what I was referring to earlier with the men's. Do you find that the men's, because the matches are a bit more one-sided, are easier to predict, whereas the women seem so volatile to me, mainly because they're 3 sets. A break in a 3-set match is going to have far more effect on a market than a break in a 5-set match, obviously.
But because they're more reliable, the price reflects that.
Yeah.
And what personally now I trade the women's a lot more. I'm very selective with what I trade on the ATP.
Right.
Because of all the breaks, because of the volatility.
Well, that's one of the questions. How do you handle the volatility of women's tennis with every second service game a break, or so it seems to me?
What I used to do a lot in the past was scalping matches. You can't do that on women's, or you've got to be very careful how you do it anyway. So I'm looking at value entries. You're looking at, there's certain patterns that I'm sure a lot of people, even that have only dabbled with tennis trading, know about, that can get broken serving for a set or serving for the match. So you're going to get a low lay there. There's lots of patterns like that you can take advantage of.
Okay. What's your favourite event, Paul?
I don't really have one, but I suppose if I had to pick one, it's got to be Wimbledon.
Okay.
You know, it's the tradition that goes along with it. Obviously, it's in our country. But really, all I'm looking at, I don't look at tournaments as such. I just look at matches. All I'm interested in is the one that I'm researching and trading now.
Right. So I guess one of the big questions people are going to want to ask, and it's probably the main one, is how do you manage the delay? As we can clearly see on Betfair who's won the point a good few seconds before we see it on the video feed or the TV. I presume this means you can't be a reactive trader like we can on the horses. We can see something and then bang, we can enter. But you can't do that on tennis because you've got to have your move planned ahead on what you think's likely to happen, don't you?
Absolutely. And a lot of people get frustrated with that at first. I'll get people emailing me saying, well, the price has moved by the time the scoreboard shows it. What am I doing wrong? Or where's the setting to turn that 5-second delay off? But it's now been reduced to a 3-second delay. You can't get around that. Everybody's faced with it. So there's no point, wasting your mental energy getting pissed off and trying to figure out, it's not fair or whatever. You just deal with it and you find ways around it.
So that leads to the next question: that do you believe that this intuition that you've got about how a match is flowing and what may or may not happen next, looking at the body language of the players, all that sort of stuff, can that be taught, or is it just intuition? And the better you are at it, the better trader you are, and the better results you'll have. Like
it obviously helps. And no, I don't think you can teach it. It's experience. And how do you teach experience? You can give someone the benefit of your experience, so I can tell them about the various patterns that they're going to see in the markets. But for it really to give you an advantage, it's got to be time spent. There's no shortcut to it.
That's exactly how I find the racing, Paul, because people come in, they get the in-running guide, they come in the room and they really struggle with the price movements and trying to read a race, and they can spot the signals because they learn the signals clearly what to look for in the guide, and they can see them. But by the time they get from seeing that to Betfair to clicking the button, the price is gone. Mm-hmm. And I try to explain exactly what you've just said. I've been watching horse racing since I was 18, as you've been doing with tennis and playing it. So you can read a game a lot better than anyone that's new, comes and joins, says, right, here I am, what do I do? Well, nothing's going to change from 30 years experience of watching tennis or horse racing. So you're trying to teach them what you're looking for and the way you think, and hopefully they can go on from there. But you certainly just can't buy either of our guides, jump into WhatsApp or Telegram and
no.
press away you go.
I mean, whilst it does give an advantage, it's more than possible to trade. So I don't know about the horses. I could never really get my head around the horses. I'd do okay for 6 races, and then the next one would just wipe out everything I'd done for the last 3 hours or whatever. In terms of tennis, there's enough mechanical rules, if that's the right way to put it, to tell them how to look for value. It's easy to teach people what value is,
Yeah.
but not necessarily to read body language. A lot of people, I mean, I spend a lot of my time trading without pictures, without live video. And certainly a lot of my members can't understand how I can do it, and they can only trade with video. And I get that, but also we're not all experts on body language. So I think sometimes you're kidding yourself that what you're seeing is genuine. I mean, the old Andy Murray is classic. You know, he'd be hobbling around the court, my knee hurts, my hair hurts, my arm hurts, and then he'd suddenly chuck 4 aces down and he's back in it, and he walks the rest of the match. So I don't think the video is definitely useful, and there are certain things that you can spot with the players. But if they're play acting and they call a medical timeout, you don't necessarily know that you're seeing reality.
It's just a mental thing, isn't it, to try and put
absolutely.
the other person off.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Andy Murray, and as you've followed me on Twitter for a long time, you'll be more than aware of my strategy on Andy Murray. It's my only tennis strategy. Is it a good one, or am I full of shit?
Well, people might be shouting at the screen that one. I'll let them answer that one. I think I had you on mute most of the time, but I did see what your strategy was.
Well, for those that are new, for those that don't know, my opinion on Andy Murray, and it's been consistent for many, many years, is Andy Murray tends to go behind in his matches a lot. He'll nearly always go down a break or lose the first set, and that fires him up, and then he comes back. So my strategy has always been lay Andy Murray at the beginning of any match, and he nearly always rises a lot in price from like 110 to 170 or even money. And then as soon as he's broken or loses that first set, he sparks into life, and more often than not will come back. So it's just been really consistent over the years that he does that.
Yeah, I think probably less so once he got past the Olympic title and his first Wimbledon. It didn't happen quite as much. Still does, because he then knows that he can come back anyway. So I don't think he walks onto court fired up quite as much as he used to.
So yeah,
I think a lot of it in the early days was he just seemed to be a bit of a mummy's boy. I mean, who takes the mum to work? I mean, come on. I think a lot of the play acting was from her influence. I just got that feeling. You know, they play up to the mum. I'm losing, mum. My arm hurts. What can I do? Come and give me a hug, mum.
So how do you deal with the very short prices we see with Nadal, Federer, Serena, etc., starting at prices of like 110 or below? There's not a lot of room to move there, is there?
No, I mean, obviously at that sort of price, 99% of the time you certainly don't want to be backing. So you've got options. You can either, if they're at 1.1, wait for 1.05, 1.06 and then lay. Chances are they're going to win. They don't always win the easy way, as you've said about Murray. That works with all of them. I think a little bit of research just to see if their opponent has given them some trouble in the past. For example, with Djokovic, Kohlschreiber, even though his career is in decline a little bit, always seems to give him at least one set where he keeps it close. And if you can find that sort of pattern in the previous matches that they've played, it can be really worth putting a lane even at the start. Or just do nothing and wait until they go set behind.
Well, that's people have asked me for advice on trading tennis, and usually I just refer them over to you and say, look, if you're really keen to do it properly, go and see this guy and get his guide and go with that. But if it's just sort of the casual tennis trader that's just looking for something to do on events, my sort of favourite strategy is I always say anything below 110, I will just always lay it pre-match, because the worst thing that can happen, worst case scenario, is it goes to 101. And if you've laid Federer or Nadal or someone at 106, the worst outcome is a 5-tick loss. So if you go and do that, even for £1,000 at 106, you're only risking 60 quid.
Mm-hmm.
And if they get broken in the first set or lose the first set, they're going up to like 140, 150, 160. And you've locked in a couple of £100 profit just based on that. So it's really the only strategy you can have. You're not going to go and back someone at 105 because the upside is only 5 ticks and the downside you're going to lose massively.
Yeah.
And anyone, they tell me, you'll be able to tell me if this is accurate, Paul, but they tell me that basically anyone in the men's top 100 can beat any other top 100 on any given day. So it's a lot more even than the prices reflect.
Yeah, definitely.
That's accurate?
I think especially these days, they're changing and playing about with the equipment that they have. So not just the rackets, but the balls themselves to maybe slow it down a little bit. And that just gives people more of a chance. You'll see if Nadal struggles against a player, it's often against a big hitter that's just leathering it every point. And they have one of those days where instead of it flying into the crowd, it's finding the court. And that's when he can struggle, for example. So yeah, absolutely. Just the low prices are not as reliable as a lot of the money buyers.
And what about surfaces? Are there any? Have you got a favourite surface, or do you find any particular surface harder to trade? Like, is grass harder than clay, or the hard courts, or indoor versus outdoor? How do you find the difficulty on all the different types of tennis we can trade?
I would say for the women's, I don't mind. It's as volatile on any surface, to be honest. For the men's, I'm not a great fan of the hard courts because any serve bots can come in and it's such a boring game when there's two big servers, which is why I stick mainly to the women's, to be honest.
Okay, so what advice would you have for someone new looking to trade the tennis? As we know how the real big hitters trade it. There's bots galore. There's courtsiders now, although they are trying to eliminate them. Yeah. There's all sorts of stuff going on with it. So how do you compete with all that sitting at home?
I mean, firstly, for courtsiders, you can't compete with it. You just can't. So it's always been there. It will always be there. As you say, they're trying to get rid of it. And the feeling you get, there's no way to know, but the feeling you get is that they are thinning out these people who can get into the court and trade at the side. The bots, bots and manual traders, there's different ways to trade tennis. One of them is they will purely look for value and take that in really short-term trades. So obviously, a bot's going to be a good idea for that. And in tennis, unlike the horses in particular, where really you could have virtually any price on a horse, there's a mathematical price that it should be at a particular point in the match. So if any market forces take it one way or the other, these bots will see that creates value, and the bots will see that value and take it and push it back to where it should be. And that all happens pretty quickly. So you're not going to get someone coming in, as you can in the horses. You can tell I've been stung a few times on the horses, I keep mentioning it. And it can suddenly move 20, 30 ticks for no apparent reason, because it's based on the people in the market. It can't be based on what's happening on the course, because nothing's happening.
Yeah, we've also got the issue that, has become apparent, and it's openly admitted now by Matchbook and by BetDAC, and I'm 100% certain it goes on with Betfair, is the people that they use for their market making have the benefit of no in-play delay. So
I've heard about that, but I never knew whether it was legend or...
It's not legend, it's fact, because you can watch, if you watch the price of the market move, and we know the TV pitches are, whatever, 4, 5, 6 seconds behind. I first established this in cricket. I wanted to know how that price was moving before the ball was even bowled. And I worked out what the delay was. And it soon became apparent that the market makers were able to just clean up, hoover up all the money. And Smarkets have admitted it. BetDAC have admitted it, Matchbook have admitted it, that yes, their market makers have the benefit of no in-play delay because they don't want to get stung in positions. They want to be able to enter and exit positions. So you're also competing against Betfair market makers now that have that no in-play delay, which really does put us at a disadvantage.
I think a lot of that I was putting down to courtsiders. I did hear, I think they're called super users or something. Does that ring a bell?
Yep.
So obviously, I think that's why I've moved away from scalping tennis matches and I'm more into the longer swing trades, because then it doesn't really matter what they're doing. The market's not going to move, as I said before, too far away from where it should be, regardless of how much delay these super users have got or not got. And that's the way that I get around it.
Well, that's another good thing that you would have with experience of watching so many matches over the years that a newcomer won't have.
Yeah.
In that you can tell at any point of a match between any two players pretty well where the price is going to go if he wins or loses the next point. So if he's trading at 1.25, if he wins this game, he'll go to 118, 117. If he gets broken, he'll go to 140. Obviously, that will change with every game, but that's a great skill to have. And eventually, people will get that with some experience. But that's not something that you can just buy a guide and teach, is it? You've got to learn where the price is. So it's like the what if. You've got to think, what if? What if he loses this game? Where will the price go? What if he wins this game? Where will the price go? Is that a fair comment?
Yeah. What I find, though, is that, say, we've got a Skype room that we use. And I've always had some sort of chat room or something linked to the service, and it never really took off as much as I hoped it would. But the group we've got now, I actually moved away from the chat. I thought, well, you're not using it. I'm sat here talking to myself. I'll just trade myself. And there was a bit of a argument, whatever, in the chat room. And somebody emailed me and said, look, you need to get in there and sort this out. So I realised then that people were using the chat. And this group that we've got at the minute over the last year and a half are picking it up really quickly, because they're sharing, as they pick something up or they notice something, they're sharing it with everybody else. And people who've been doing it a couple of weeks are starting to know where the price should be. They're picking up really well because you're trading with your peers.
Yep, that's exactly what I find in the horse racing room. Everybody's helping each other. And it's far better than trying to do it on Twitter when you can get all sorts of idiots, you get all the trolls. The only people in the room are the people that want to be there and they're there for a reason. We have no grief at all, ever, in our rooms. We don't have any arguments. We don't. The only one that I've got that's a bit lively at the moment is I've started up a coronavirus room because I didn't want everyone talking in the tennis room, the football room, the cricket room about what's going on in the world. So I've said, look, if you guys want to discuss that, here's a new room where that's the topic. And it's worked great because now we've set up these webinars and what you and I are doing to take people's minds off that and get away from it. But people are interested. So I've said, there's that room. And it gets a bit lively with all the conspiracy theories and tin hats. It's like the Wild West in there, but it's a load of fun. So look, one last question I've sort of got, I'm sure I'll have some more, but before I start throwing to our guests, is what are your thoughts on Wimbledon being canned, and when do you think, I know it's a guess, but when do you think we'll start seeing some resumption in tennis?
I think with Wimbledon, it was never really in doubt that it was going to be cancelled. Certainly not an expert on the virus, but it does seem to be behaving more or less as the experts expect, that we're going to reach this peak and we're going to go down the other side. And I think the time that they were planned to take, that Wimbledon was planned to take place, was sort of in a middle ground of no chance to slight chance. And because of all the extra stuff that goes with a massive tournament, there's no way they could allow that to go ahead. It was going to cost them a lot of money apart from anything else. Well, they are actually insured against a lot of the loss. I think they've actually made a profit by cancelling it.
Mate, they've made a lot of money. For people that don't know, what Wimbledon have done is they've been paying $2 million US dollars a year for pandemic insurance. And I think they've been paying it for the last 34 years. So they've spent about $70,000 $70 million. And of course, they claimed it this year and they got paid out $170 million. So they've picked up a cool $100 million. So some might think cynically that rather than wait and see, they've just canned it, got the money, away they go. But they couldn't do it because you've got all the ball boys and I mean, it's a massive amount of people to put on a tennis tournament. It's not just two players and an umpire, like some idiots have said. Well, why don't, it's only two people and an ump. They're not going to be within 2 feet of each other. Crack on with it. But that just can't be done, can it?
As soon as you've got anything like the number of people that even the smaller tournaments would have, you've got to have medical assistance if it's needed. And you cannot be pulling from the NHS at a time like this, even if it was well on the way to restrictions being lifted, etc. I think we're a long way from that totally happening. And it just wouldn't, certainly not good PR to say, well, we need X number of, even if it's St John's ambulances. You just can't do it. I think they were on a hiding to nothing if they tried to put it on at the same time. And the problem with it being a grass tournament, it's got to be in the summer. You can't play it in the winter.
Of course not. No.
So it was never going to go. It was never going to go ahead. It was never going to be rearranged because there's just nowhere in the revised schedule to fit it in.
They're talking about bringing the racing back on May the 1st here behind closed doors, and racing hasn't stopped in Australia. It's still going on behind closed doors, and the greyhounds are still going on in Australia behind closed doors. And of course, we see there's still football going on in certain countries. But so for someone, Paul, that's never traded tennis, where do they start? What sort of markets are they looking at? You're probably just looking at the match odds, aren't you, really?
Yeah, that's the main one. That's where all the liquidity is. You can use things like the set markets, the set 1 winner, set 2 winner, or whether it's going to be 2-0, 2-1. There's a little bit of money in there, enough to be able to use them, but it tends to be a bit more of a punt because you can't guarantee you're going to be able to get out if you're looking to trade out. So you need to be looking at match odds.
Is there any value at all with those, the shorties that we were talking about before? Is there any value in looking at the handicap market for that, like plus 5.5, 6.5 games? You got any strategies around that?
I use those quite sparingly, to be honest. The problem I've got with the handicap is if you're in the match odds market, you and the player have got the same goal. They want to win, and that's what the match odds is all about. They're not interested in the score; they just want to win it. So if you're looking for them to win on a handicap, especially, they're not too worried if they go double break up and you're thinking, great, this is going to land. They can then relax, not win by a double break, still win the set, but you've lost your bet. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
They're not pushed. They're not thinking, oh, people are on a handicap here. I need to hold this.
No, of course not. And obviously, if you're up a break in a match, and you know that all you have to do is hold your next serve to win, you're not going to put full energy into winning his service game. You're just like, yep, just play it how it comes, and all I've got to do is hold serve, and I've won the match. So, okay.
If I'm putting money on a player, I want to know that they want the same outcome that I do.
So we've got a question from Michael there about when you started trading tennis, which we spoke about. What were the first strategies you've used, and do you still use them? So we know you spoke about the one that didn't work, where you'd wait until a player got broken and then you'd back him.
Well, it worked. It worked. I was making money.
But it's not great value.
Value, don't do it.
No.
Because
if you take bad value long term, you're going to lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
So whilst it might work, a guy's up a break or whatever, jump on him. Long term, that's going to turn around and bite you. So the strategies you used when you first started, you're still using them, or have they just developed over the years and you've got rid of them and they're different?
No, I mean, as I said earlier, there was no one telling you what to do. I didn't even know about laying properly, but it must have been a couple of years, which sounds ridiculous now. All I knew was what I brought from the odd 20 quid bet on the football.
Right.
I'd look for I can remember a phrase that I used to throw about all the time in the forum when people said, what are you looking for? And all I said was, I'm looking for a price that's got somewhere to go if they get a break. So for that reason, I was staying away from 1.3, 1.4 because you weren't getting anything.
No.
But I was staying away for the wrong reason. I was staying away because my reasoning was I'm not going to get many ticks, rather than it's shit value, don't back there.
Okay. So I've got one here from Alistair that says, is trading between games profitable to scalp for a tick or two, or is the weight of money simply not worth it, as he never seems to get the direction right? He can't work out if it drifts in favour or against the next server.
Depends on the players involved. It definitely can be profitable. Certainly after the set is a good time to try it, because you'll get the slight overreaction when the set point is won. And then especially if it's a fairly even match and they're expecting a competitive second set, the market is immediately going to start moving towards the player that lost. You need to try and anticipate where the price will be once that set point or game point is won. That's the only way you can do it these days, really.
Okay, cool.
Try and get in after the point's won, you're too far behind.
Right. So we notice, like in football, that at half time the money just piles in, and the big players, you know, for 50, 60, 100,000 pounds, they're just trying to trade all while nothing's happening on the field, they're just trying to get a load of money matched at a tick. So we've got another one saying, do you recommend trading all the major tournaments? I think we sort of covered that a bit before about, do you have a favourite, different surfaces, whatever, or the Grand Slams? But you're just pretty well trading any tennis that's going that day, isn't it? When you trade tennis, you trade tennis.
Yeah, I mean, a theory I used to have, and it doesn't seem to fit as much these days, is that in the massive tournaments, the top players are going to be more motivated. And when I say the top players, top 30 maybe. So you would expect them to perform better. It doesn't happen as much these days. And I think it's partly because of the measures they're taking in the equipment that they use to level the playing field a little bit. You have a lot of, I think some of it is in the coaching, the rackets that they've got now. It just all levels it out a little bit more. It's not as one-sided as it used to be.
Okay. I've got a question here from Steve. He was looking at your website last night, the Tradeshark website, and it says on the site, when you join Tradeshark Tennis, you're not on your own. You get a pro tennis trader as your mentor. So what does that involve? He's asking, is there an opportunity there? Obviously, it would be at an extra cost, but is there an opportunity there, like they get with me, to do a one-to-one?
Yes. Obviously, I've got a lot of members, as you do. A lot of the one-to-one can just be by email, or I can do a Skype if I need to. If it's easy for me to show something by sharing my screen and say, look, this is what I mean, I'll do that for no extra cost if it's a member. If it's going to be a 5-10 minute thing, you know, I'm good at tweaking what the advice that I'm giving to the individual. So what I say, it's a two-way thing. If they can keep me up to date with how they're progressing, mistakes they think they're making, I get to know the person, and that means I can save a lot of time with the advice that I'm giving, rather than giving somebody who's got a bit more experience, telling them all the real basic stuff that's just going to bore them stupid. We can cut exactly to what they're doing wrong, how to put it right. So I probably give too much support for no extra cost, but that's the way I do it. It works.
Okay. So I've got a question from Trader 44. Many of the matches that are they're trading through the night as they're overseas. So like the Australian Open and stuff. But I mean, we get to trade a lot of the Australian Open, don't they? It's okay for our time. How sort of flexible are you with your time, and what hours are you putting in?
I've tried, certainly in the last couple of years, to keep my working hours as close to normal, whatever normal is, so it fits in with family, because I found that causes less friction. You need a reasonably calm family life to be able to concentrate on trading. But yeah, if I need to be up all night to trade the Australian Open, I stay up all night.
And what's the time scale with the US Open? That would be worse, would it? Is the US Open?
No, they start early. I think they start around about 4 o'clock-ish our time.
So the Aussies are the bad ones. That's the worst time frame.
Really bad.
Obviously, the French is fine. Wimbledon's fine.
Yeah, Europeans are fine.
It's just the Australians.
China can be a bit of a pain because they start at like 3 a.m.
Yeah. Okay.
No, it's not too bad.
I tend to do the same here, Paul. I've learned over the years that the best thing for me is the missus goes to work at 8:30. So I'm at my desk from 8:30 doing all my research, the analysis for the next day. Then I'm pretty well trading the racing from, 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And then I'll send the email for the next day and then have some dinner. I'll come back up for 15 minutes, tidy up. But then at 7 o'clock, that's me. Computer off. I'm downstairs with her till 10 o'clock watching TV, having that. You've got to have that relationship. There's no way that it can work that I sit here all day talking to my members, then trade the racing, then have dinner for 10 minutes with her, then come up and trade the Champions League football and stuff. So with the evening football, I tend to just do my analysis, put my bets on, and then spend the time with her. If there's a real special game I want to watch, obviously I say I'd like to watch this one. And there's a lot of flexibility like that. But
not doing that caused me a lot of problems in the early days. To the point where I was actually forced to move out for a while. So you learn that. I just thought when I was going full time, it just affected me, but it doesn't, because you're in the home.
Of course.
So if you've got someone else in the home who's got a day off from work, they don't want you hanging around. You should be out at work. You're not supposed to be here. This is my time to sit and watch what I want on TV or whatever.
Yeah.
And once I got that straight in my head, it was a lot better.
One of the real light bulb moment for me was I really used to struggle. If I'd take my kids to the swimming pool for a few hours of an afternoon, I found that I was in the pool resenting being there, thinking this is costing me £300 or £400, and you're not enjoying time with your family and stuff. And I soon learnt that, you know what, no matter what time I turn that computer on, there's another race and another football game or another cricket game. It's non-stop. So if I missed an afternoon of racing, I actually wasn't missing anything at all, because there's races the next day and the next night and it just doesn't stop. So now I really enjoy the time with my kids, and I treasure it because it's vital. And the time with my partner downstairs of a night, I love it, because you can't go all the time. You just get burnt out and you end up resenting what you're doing. You find 5-10 years down the track, you've missed your kids growing up, your partner's gone. Oh, when did she leave? Oh, 6 years ago. Oh, did she? Okay. So yeah, I used to really resent, thinking I was missing money being out with my kids doing stuff like that. And so
I've got a similar thing now. We've got 2 granddaughters, 3 and 5. And the best time for me to go and see her is when my wife looks after them a couple of days a week. So I'll go during the afternoon. And whether they notice in the chat room where I'm going, or I'm disappearing at the same time on a Wednesday and a Thursday, but I'm going to see my grandkids.
Excellent.
If I miss some matches, I miss some matches. As you say, there's plenty more coming on.
There's more matches coming up, isn't there? So it never stops. So Steve sort of agrees with it. He knows nothing about the players in the game apart from the top ones. So if he's to learn this, he's saying he doesn't want to just rely on you. He doesn't want to have to wait till Tradeshark comes online to tell him what to do. He needs to go and put the time in and learn how to do this himself. So that's a really...
Something I do give with the guide is I've got a list of the top 100 men and top 100 women, and I give some information on each of those players and the traits and how they've done the previous year, etc., which people find useful just to give them a start. They can add to that. So that's something that's on the members area as well.
Okay. So Paul, just touching on taking losses, this is something that people are quite impressed with what I do, because when I do a trade on the races, I just post a screenshot into the members room to show them what I did. And I'll often say that wasn't going right, so I've traded out and went and did this. And it's something a lot of people struggle with when they start. So I've got a question here that it says there that I drill into them, is learning to take losses. What's your experience of taking losses from your early days and compared to now, and also handling a big win? Because if anyone comes here for a one-to-one course, one of the things I say is, if you go downstairs and ask my partner now, did I win or lose a grand yesterday? She wouldn't have a clue. There's no emotion. I don't get excited if I win 500, and I have no emotion if I lose. It's just part of the game. We have wins and losses, and I'm presuming you'd be the same, because none of us now would have a clue if you'd sort of won or lost in the last couple of months. You just like, that's it. So how do you handle big wins or losses now?
I think in the early days, I was very, I'm going to say risk averse, even though I was taking crap value. I didn't realise I wasn't managing the risk too well. But I would get out pretty quickly. I just thought I can get back in again. These days, with the swing trades, the potential is for a bigger loss. If you're getting, if say you're going to back a player that's lost the first set, and maybe for extra value, you wait till they go a break behind in set 2 and then back them. If they get battered in that game, you're going to lose, and it's going to be a little bit bigger than, you know, your average loss, if you like. But because you can be consistent, you know that you're going to get it back. I'm not saying you're going to get it back in one match. It might take 2 or 3, but you're confident in your ability, and it's almost boring. It's not exciting. Don't get me wrong. If I win 600-700 quid on a match, you get a little bit of excitement there, but then you're on to the next one. And it's the same if you get, you know, when you're going to have a loss and you can't do anything about it, and you're in the process of getting out. By the time I've got out of that position, I've already reconciled what my new bank is, my new bank level, and it's move on to the next one, because you know you're not going to lose that every game.
That's really interesting, because that's identical to the way I look at it. It's like you just got to be able to put it behind you fairly quickly. And one of the big problems a lot of people have, and they come to me for help, is I go, all right, I have all these wins, but then when I have this loss, I've instantly got to get it back. And it's like, oh, that shouldn't have happened. I was unlucky. That went against me. That's not my fault. I want that money back. And they go in harder on the next match, maybe without doing the research, trying to chase that back, which is why I ended up writing the Trading Mindset book, to deal with that and how you can't do it. Because I'm the same as you, Paul. I know that if I do have a loss on a race, that it's not a big deal. I just put it down as a business expense. We've all got them, you know. You've got computer screens, you've got mouse, you've got internet, you've got Sky Sports, you've got all the stuff that you've got to have to run your business. And a loss is just one of them. It's like a courier putting petrol in his car. It doesn't bother him putting that £60 in, because he's got to do it to run his business. Yeah. Same as me. If I lose 50 quid on a game, it's just, I'll know that I'll get it back if I just keep doing my process. So process is the vital key here, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it becomes second nature. I mean, sometimes people ask me why I'm doing if I post a YouTube video, why did you do that at that point? And sometimes I've got to go back and watch it and almost go through the process myself, whereas at the time I just thought, that's the situation, this is what I'm doing. That's the way it works.
Okay, we've got one here just asking regarding research. Are there any specific sites useful for tennis stats, a bit like the tennis equivalent of Football Form Labs or anything? Where do you get your statistics from?
Very easy one, Tennis Insight.
There you go, Chris.
I do all my research on Tennis Insight. It's a paid-for site. They've got various different subscription levels. Something like 3 months will cost you €14. It's not a lot of money. There's a massive amount of information in there.
And it's updated fairly sharpish after the event.
Even if a player pulls out, for example, they'll update, and another player comes in to replace them. They'll update that pretty quickly. I have him always in my Twitter DMs, and if he's missed one, I'll send him a little message saying, don't think you've got this one quite right yet, and within 2 minutes he's done it. They're really, really good.
Superb. So Steve's got a question here for you, mate, saying you started trading at work. How soon did you realise that your trading profit overtook your monthly wage? Or like me, I got into this through necessity. I moved to a very remote part of Scotland, and I had 2 choices: chase cows for £150 a week in 3-degree temperatures, or become a sports trader. So I flipped a coin and I chose sports trading. How was the transition from work to trading because of what happened, or a choice that you made to stop and I'm going down this path now?
I found that I was making more money trading the tennis at work than being paid to be at work. And I was doing it consistently, and I was taking silly risks. And looking back, I can't believe what I was doing. I mean, it was in, I suppose it's a typical sales type office. It was a customer service place with rows of desks with PCs on, and people sat, I think, about 4 in each row. And the number of times I turned round and saw one of the directors stood behind me, not looking at my screen, but he could have done. He could have glanced across and seen the little scoreboard in the bottom and think, well,
yeah,
that's not one of our applications. What are you doing? Thankfully, my boss at the time had really bad eyesight, and one time she was stood behind me looking at my screen. Oh shit! She didn't see it. She was so short-sighted.
Wow.
And I actually found out. I used to sit opposite the main security guy, the IT security. And I'm sat doing my work, and I was aware of a guy stood next to him, and they were having a conversation and said, well, how's he doing it? I said, USB stick. And what I was doing, I had Racing Trader on a USB stick, and I found that if I stuck that in the back of the tower, I could even trade the horses. And as soon as I heard that, straight under the desk, pulled this thing out, hid it down my sock. I thought, I'm going to get sacked. You're just not allowed to, I'm going to get sacked. And I don't know if it was a genuine conversation or whether it was for my benefit to just give me a little tip, say, look, stop pissing about, you can't do that. I don't know. Either way, they never said anything. I left of my own accord. I wasn't sacked, but I found that I was making more on the tennis than I was by sitting in that office. So I took a week off work, second week of Wimbledon, so it wasn't an ideal one. There's not many matches on. I think I made something like £1,800.
Wow.
What am I doing? Why am I sitting in the office? Yeah. Talked it through with my wife, and that was it.
Okay. So Stephen's asked, just if you're just watching tennis just as a fan, who's your favourite player just to watch?
I'm not really a fan as such. I like types of players. I like the new Nadal. I think his game is as strong as it's ever been. I don't particularly like watching Djokovic. I like watching Federer if he is getting pushed, so he's having to do a little bit more of his use his skills. I like seeing the young up and coming players who have suddenly found that they can compete, and you can see the joy. A young lad, Sinner, has come through in the last 12 months or so. He's going to be a top player. Just anybody who's fighting. I can't be doing with players who give up.
No.
I'm not particularly a fan. I don't follow particular players on
Yeah, I think you've already touched on it in something you said earlier, but it was certainly resonated with me that the more we do this, I got into it because I really love sport. I find that my love of sport has diminished a lot. I'm not fussed if I miss a game of football. I'm not really into cricket. It's just, for me, you're trading a game now and you make money and you move on to the next game. You don't really care about the outcome. Once you've locked your trade in and you've got your profit, you don't want to sit there for 40 minutes and watch the rest of the game. You'll go and do something else. Yeah. So it's definitely more about a business than a passion for the event, isn't it?
I've also got a partner who hates sport with a passion. I don't have Sky Sports because I would never get to see it. There's no point. I can watch all. Excuse me. I can watch all I need to do on the streams on the PC.
So you mentioned before that you sometimes don't use the pictures. Are there events where you don't have pictures, but do you use commentary? Do you have commentary on listening to that at all? Is there any?
No, they don't tend to have. If you've got commentary, it's because they've got a video going. All I look at is the in-play stats. Okay. So I can follow, you can get an idea of the momentum of a game as to how the in-play stats are changing. So you can't just look at it once, you've got to be monitoring it all the time.
Right.
For example, to see how their second serve points won are going up or down. That's a good indicator of who's doing well in the set.
Does that Tennis Insights, does that have the live stats, or are you looking at Bet365 or something for that?
No, I use Tennis 24. It's similar to Flash Scores. They're all pretty much the same.
Okay, so Tennis Insight for your research.
Yep.
And Tennis 24 for your in-play stuff.
Yep.
Have you compared that to Bet365 and others, or are they all basically using the same input, getting it from the same umpire, aren't they?
Yeah, but the stats that you get for Bet365 are quite limited, I find. You get a lot more detail on the Flash Score and the Tennis 24.
Okay, superb.
Or even there are sometimes for like challenger matches where you don't get Flash Scores, don't give in-play stats. There's a free ATP app that does all matches, ITF, everything. You get in-play stats for those.
Okay, so Trader 44's asked us, what about backing the server? Do you use it? Is that one of your strategies, or that's too basic, isn't it? Or
no, I mean it can work, especially if you've got. I said before, I don't particularly like the men's matches when it's on a hard court because it's just so boring. You've got no way to
factor it in, wouldn't it? Whoever's serving, he's got a high percentage chance of holding his serve. The market's already factored that in. Yeah. So the upside of him holding serve is far outweighed by the downside of if he gets broken.
It can, but what you can do is either wait for love 15 or love 30. Chances are he's going to bang a couple of aces down. You get a decent price move that way.
That's the one I tend to use. If a server is down love 30, I'll tend to then back them because they get back to 30 all and bang, you're back down. And if they go on to hold, you've picked up a bit of a bit more profit. Okay, so let's see what else. Do you stick to the ATP and WTA events or to challenger events? They're asking basically, do you find more fixing in the lower level events, or is fixing not really an issue that you come across? Can you tell what
fixing is an issue in tennis generally. The percentage of matches that are affected by it are thankfully very small. So it's unlikely, you're pretty unlucky if you get affected by a fixed match. I will trade challenges if there's no main tour matches on. If given the choice, I'm going to go for the higher ranked players. The reason they're higher ranked is generally because they're more consistent.
Okay, superb.
Although I do find actually that the challenges tend to go more with the stats. You know, if you research a match, you have a good chance of predicting which way a challenger is going to go, perhaps more than on the main tour sometimes.
Okay. So we've got one of your members in here, Darren. He just wants to thank you for your help for him, and his tennis has improved so much in a much shorter space of time than with the horses. He also really likes your watch, and he would like to know what it is. What's your watch, and where did you get it?
I don't know. It was a present.
I knew it would be a present.
It's nothing special, trust me.
It's just a watch.
I don't know. I'll dig it out and tell him later. I don't know.
There you go, Darren. Email Tradeshark and he'll tell you all about his watch.
If this coronavirus goes on much more, I'll sell it to him.
I'm reading this one off the cuff, so I'm sorry if we've covered it. Hi, Paul and Tony. For many years, men's tennis has been dominated by the big four, Federer, Djokovic, Nadal, Murray. Have you seen many signs of the younger generation yet pushing aside these older players? And if so, is it predominantly in the best of 3 matches rather than in the best of 5? That one's from Jeremy.
There are. I've touched on it with the change of equipment that's being used. It's leveling things out a little bit. While the likes of Djokovic and Nadal, Federer seems to be in a bit of a decline at the minute. But while they're at their best, it's very difficult for players to knock them out. They'll do it occasionally. They're not going to win every match. And it's much harder to do it over 5 sets. Class tends to come through in best of 5.
Okay, so like me, Paul, are you solely a manual trader or are you using any sort of automation?
No, just manual.
Yeah,
a lot of the guys in the chat room are getting into the bots, the programming their own, but it's all Greek to me. I've no idea.
So when you're looking at stop losses, is there anything that you've sort of got fixed in your head when you go into a trade that you know, if you're risking 200 pounds on a trade, that you're prepared to get out when that hits 40, 50, 60. Like for mine, I'll go into a horse racing trade, and if that goes against me for 20 pounds, I'll look to exit at that point. So a lot of people foolishly think that, like what happened to you in your early days, because you didn't know any better, when you're doing horse racing trading, if it goes pear-shaped, you lose a big amount because the horse goes on to win, you let it go out. Well, we only really trade the first half of the race. And I'm only getting into a trade because I expect that price to go up. If it doesn't do what I want and it goes against me for 20 quid, I'll just get out of the trade and look for something else. And I show that a lot in the trading room. So that's why there's no big bank blowing losses for me. How do you handle losses in a tennis match? And when do you think this just isn't going my way? I've got to get out of this.
I think a word that you said there is expectation. And if my expectation of how the match is going to go is so far away from the actual reality once it starts, I'll look to get out pretty quickly and just reassess, just stop. But if it's difficult in tennis because it can turn so quickly, that the scoring system just makes, you know, matches doing 180 is normal. In fact, if you see a straight line graph on tennis, it's really unusual. So it's more down to feel, to be honest, at this stage. If I feel I'm hoping, I get out.
Yeah, that's it. If you're starting to rely on hope, you know you're in trouble. And that's the good thing about horses, Paul. If a horse starts to run well, his price just comes down gradually and you can see the improvement. You think, no, he's coming. I've got to get out of this. There's no massive drop unless, you know, you're trading one at the front and then the red hot favourite falls. Then you can be in trouble. But generally, it is more manageable. A tennis match can turn on 2 points. A player can have match point and be trading at 102, 103. He gets broken, loses the game, loses the next game, and now suddenly, well, hang on, he could lose this. He could now be trading at 5. I see the point. Now, one of the most common questions I'm asked, and it probably is the most common one, is how much money do you need to trade? Now, I never, to counteract that, I never keep more than £1,000 in my Betfair account, because I used to trade with 3, 4, 5,000 and found that the bigger my bank, the more risk I was happier to take and the bigger my losses. And I trade much better at a lower level. That's why I just go for the, like you've seen, £10 a race, £10 a race. If you can make 10 or 25 pounds on each race, and there's 20 races a day, it's no stress. You've got no fear of loss. So the question here is, you know, I never hold more than 1,000. Now, we interviewed Alan Thompson last week, and as an arbor who's virtually taking no risk, but he's got to have vast amounts of money in his Betfair account, bookmakers accounts, moving money everywhere, in and out. What do you think? The question is, what sort of bank do you find comfortable to make money trading tennis? And an added question to that is, what bank size would you recommend a beginner start with? My guess would be maybe 250 quid for the beginner. He wouldn't want to risk more than that while he's learning the ropes. What sort of bank size are you using, if that's not too personal?
No, that's fine. I tend to have 3,000 in mine. I don't have the problem that pushes me to overtrade. I did increase my stakes quite a bit a few years ago, and I wasn't as comfortable as I felt I should be. So I just lowered it down a little bit. I started to put them up a little bit more now. It's just what you're comfortable with. A good rule of thumb is if you crap yourself when you place that first trade, your stakes are too big.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd agree with the 200 to 250 for a beginner. It doesn't really need to be that much initially, because what I will say is just use minimum stakes. Because you're going to make errors, you're going to make mistakes. You can't avoid that really while you're learning. It just makes no sense for it to cost a lot of money.
Well, one thing, Paul, that all the softwares have, and we'll get onto that next, is they've all got liability mode. So you can go and, like, I use BetTrader, and I can go and set BetTrader to a maximum loss of £50. So it doesn't matter what price I lay a player at or back a player, it won't put more than £50 in. So I highly recommend my racing traders, when they first start to learn to trade horses in running, it's frightening when you first do it. Just use liability mode for £10. Then the worst thing that can happen, if everything goes pear-shaped, is you you lose 10 quid. So that's what I'd say to your tennis followers as well. Use liability mode while you're learning the ropes. So that leads us into the next question from Damo is, which software do you use? I think I know the answer, but I'll let you answer it.
I use the Geek's Toy.
Yeah, I thought that was the one. Yeah.
The reason I switched to that, I've tried various different ones. Obviously, BetTrader. I've tried Fairbots, which is pretty good for tennis as well. I'm maybe a bit of a control freak, and I like being able to change everything exactly as I want it.
It's very customizable, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's what I like. So I go with that. I've been with that for it's about 10 years, I think.
Yeah, and people often ask me what software, and I think that BetAngel and Geek's Toy are great for experienced traders like yourself to customize it. The reason I recommend BetTrader to beginners is it's just so simple. You can't get all overwhelmed with bells and whistles.
Mm-hmm.
It just does what it says on the box. Learn to trade the prices on that, and then when you want more customizable stuff, maybe move to one of the more advanced things, which is when a lot of newcomers come to me and say, I had to stop using Geek's Toy. I couldn't understand most of what was in it. It was far too complicated. This is much easier. So you'd agree with that?
Yes, I actually produced a video for my members to show exactly how I set mine up. And it's fairly simple. You don't need all the bells and whistles for tennis. That's why Fairbot is particularly good. I haven't used that for years. They may have upgraded it. I don't know. But at the time I used it, it was really basic. That's where I stole the Tradeshark hedge idea from. You don't need all the extra stuff.
Okay. Question from Steve saying he finds the tick offset tool excellent for in running on the horses. Is this the tool that you use in tennis at the moment to remove emotion from the trades? So, like, are you using a tick offset, or are you just taking a position, waiting for the market to move your way and then manually exiting?
It's all manual. I don't use any tools. Don't use a stop loss because you can get triggered, by a spike in the price. I just do it all manual.
So when you mentioned the tick offset before, I
was trying the horses. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Do you always hedge out, Paul, or are there times you just know that match is going in your favour and you're just riding it to expiry? They might be up 2 breaks in a set and they're up 2 sets to love, and you think, well, there's no need to trade out of this.
I've been stung too many times.
Same. I always get out. I say it all the time.
Yeah, the minimum I would do, generally, if you've come from certainly a high price and you're below 1.1, I'm looking to minimum take your liability out.
Yeah.
Or hedge with more on your player. I really struggle with even free bets, because if it starts to go against me, I'm thinking I should get out now. I should get out. I think, why are you doing it? Just hedge and move on.
Just take the money, don't you? Yeah, it's something that I say. There's so many times, and you will have seen it, how many horses trade above 200, 300, even 1,000 and come back and win. And so you think, well, that horse is beat. It's trading 1,000. I'm not getting out. Yeah. And they just come back to win. It's incredible.
I think people it's almost a bettor's mindset. They've got to get the absolute maximum from that match. And I understand that. But long term, move on. There's you get certain periods in a match that's easier, like the first set often, or the beginning of the second set. Take advantage of those, hedge it, and move on to the next easy one, rather than trying to figure out the third set.
I find that it becomes part of the process, especially for me. Just trade, get it right, get out, move on. Because 44's put it, he finds that every time, if he doesn't get out and you find yourself picking and choosing, you can really do your head in, because you think, oh, I'll stay on this one, and it gets beat. And you think, oh, that's great, I got the lot. I'll stay in on this one. Oh, it's beat, I got the lot. And then you do it again and it wins, and you think, oh, no. So the next time you trade out, oh, I shouldn't have done that. It's better to just have a process, isn't it?
Yeah,
just
definitely.
Do what you do. Because I say to people, like, if you could sit outside of bookies and every person that walked in had to give you 10 quid, how long would you sit there? Obviously, you'd never leave.
Yeah.
And that's what horse racing is for me. It's just process. See it, bet it, exit, move on. See it, bet it, exit, move on.
When you're doing it full time, you don't want it stressful.
No, and that's
I don't want one stressful day a week.
Because if I don't trade out, I'm then watching the rest of that race to think, don't come back, don't come back. Whereas when I trade out, you're only giving back a couple of quid, and you just don't care about the rest of the race. You just open the next one and move on.
Yeah.
Same thing for you with tennis?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
You've got your profit, bang, take it.
Yeah.
Do you then stop watching the match and move on and research something else?
Definitely.
You don't look for another opportunity?
Yeah, sometimes, occasionally, but especially there's always matches coming up.
Yeah.
And you'll highlight certain matches that you're really interested in trading because you think there's a really good opportunity. So especially if there's another match coming up, that one gets shut down before the market does. One
of the biggest disappointments for me trading cricket is I'll do a few fantastic trades and have a lovely profit, keep watching the game because I like cricket, and then see another opportunity, get that wrong, and give some of your profit back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you get ticked off with that. So you go in again to try and get it back. And I've come out of games, Paul, losing money after being up a couple of hundred. And I'm thinking, what am I doing here? You can get emotionally involved in the games. And I can
remember a few years ago, it was one of the few live webinars that I did. And I think I was 95 hedged on the match. And because I had 30 people watching, I wanted to get it to 100. Couldn't do it. And I ended up coming away with about 75 or something. I just couldn't get that extra. If I'd just left it at 95, it would have been much more impressive and moved away.
It used to be like before I learned all about value and the trading mindset, the amount of times that you'd have a set fixed win figure, be it either 100 or 1,000 in your head, and you think, oh, I've won 95 or 950. I've just got to get 50 more to hit that target, and you end up blowing the lot. So what I tend to do now is during the afternoon, I don't have my profit and loss on. I don't look at it. I just trade every race. I go through my process. I take the screenshot, stick it in the room, next race. Then at the end of the day, I go and have a look at how I've done, and that's my result. Because if you're looking at it, you think, oh, I've done 4 races. I haven't made a lot. I better up mistakes. Or if you look and you think, wow, I'm up 300, I don't want to lose that. You change your process and you get, oh,
you can do that. Yeah.
So are you the same? Do you just trade each game and look at the end of the day? Or
I don't always look at the end of the day, to be honest. You can get a good idea from your bank balance.
What sort of records are you keeping? Is it daily, weekly, monthly? What are you doing record keeping?
I used to do it longhand. I've got a notebook, several notebooks now, and I literally just write the very basics of what I've traded, why I did it. I don't want to start writing too much because then if it's too big a task, you'll put it off and then it won't happen. Just something that I can look back at for any particular thoughts. It's more the thoughts that I had about the player at the time.
Okay. I've got a question here. What are you doing now whilst the tennis on hold? How are you occupying your days? You're talking to members, you're updating your ebook. What are you doing? You writing a new one?
I'm not writing a new one. It always gets updated anyway. Not doing a great deal, to be honest. Researching search engine optimization. I've been obsessed with that for the last year or so. Reading books.
Celebrity webinars.
Yeah, stuff like that. You know. Anything to fill a couple of hours in.
Yep, cool. So Tony's asked, would you say players sometimes let a game go at 40 love if they're already a few games in front to save the energy for the next game? We did touch on that before, didn't we?
Yeah, definitely happens.
Especially the older players, isn't it? It's about energy management now. I can't win this one, save it for the next one.
It can be, and it can just be because they sulk. You know, they're pretty sulky animals, tennis players.
So I guess this question's for me. You said Geek's Toy is BetTrader. Well, I'll let you answer it. Is BetTrader okay for someone to start trading tennis?
Yeah, absolutely. The main thing, I'll deny it if my wife ever says it, but I am a control freak to some extent.
Right.
I just like the fact that I could choose exactly how it looks on the screen.
Yeah.
I used to use BetTrader and I had no problem with it for tennis at all.
Because Geek's Toy, you can change it to look like BetAngel or look like BetTrader, like anything, can't you? And you can customize it.
I've had mine set up pretty much the same for 8-9 years, whatever.
So if you can email me after this the link to that video showing how you set yours up? That'd be
Yeah,
great.
sure.
I'll send it to the guys so they can see how you've got it set up. That'd be really cool. So yeah, it's fine for you to start with because they all do the same thing, don't they? BetAngel,
pretty
Geeks
much.
Toy, Gruss, Fairbot, BetTrader.
Yeah,
They're all just coming from the API.
I think a lot of the tools that are in there are seen to be mainly for the horses. Is my perception of it.
Well, they were built for horse racing.
Yeah, really. I think that's where they start from, and certainly for tennis, you just need it basic. You don't need all the bells and whistles.
Are you a grid trader or a ladder trader?
Ladder.
Yeah, it's got to be ladder, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, the grid's a bit pointless because you can't really see the depth of the market, and it's a bit harder to get your bets in. On the ladder, you can see everything you want, where the money is, and you can.
I think the only time I tend to use the grid is if I'm backing goals on a football match. I can just stick it in the corner of a screen while I'm doing something else.
Yeah. So Keith asked us, do you look to win a percentage of your stake for trading out, etc.? So if you've laid something for 200 quid, are you looking to get out of that at a set percentage of it, or are you just trading what you see?
I'm certainly aware of the percentage all the time, and it's liability as opposed to stake. Obviously, that can be different. Really, anything over, I'd say, people ask me this all the time, and I say anything over 10% initially is great. Then look to build that to 20, and then after that, with experience, you can obviously get more than that. If you're doing the low lays, obviously you can easily get 100% of liability.
Yeah. So we did touch on this one before, but I think it's an important point. So we're going to go over it again just to reinforce it. But if you've made a certain amount on the match after one set, would you then stop trading that match or continue looking for further opportunities if you think you're in the zone?
I often will do that, and especially so if there's another match that I'm wanting to get involved in as well.
Sorry, you will do what? Keep going with it or stop?
No, I will shut it down.
Right.
And move on to the next one. If there's nothing to go to, I'll probably stick with that match and see if another opportunity comes up.
Okay, so another question on the same theme, might even be the same sort of question. You'll know the answer to this. Would you do multiple trades on one game?
Oh yes, yeah, definitely.
Okay, so you'll often, rather than just have a big stake, look to get out. You might average into a match, average out of it. You just
just manage the game that's in front of you. That's all.
Yeah, managing the liability, of course, as you go. Okay, so we'll see if we've got any other questions. This is really interesting from Paul. Would you say that trading is 75% research and strategy and 25% mental? How would you put the mental side of it?
I think both. You've picked the two things there that are vital for it. I spend more time researching matches than trading. I'm more picky on the matches that I get involved with, but so much of trading is in the mind.
Well, that's for me. To answer that question for you, Paul, myself, I do no research on the horse racing. I just wait for a race to start and trade what I see. So for me, it's 80% mental, just managing that risk, managing that position, staying focused, and just going through the process. I know what I'm looking for in the gaps and the signals. And when the signals are there, it's just mental. Execute, exit. That's it. So for me, it's 80% mental, 20% process. What is it for you?
Well, it's the different sports, isn't it? I don't think you should ever get involved in a tennis match without doing some level of research. And again, there's a video on YouTube showing the base check that I do for every match that you can do in about a minute. You should at least be doing that before you get involved.
Cool. So obviously we can send the guys to your YouTube page. It's not for members, is it? Anyone can view.
Yeah, it's for anybody.
Yeah. Okay. So what have we got here? There we go, Steve. I'm going to sign up to Tradeshark this evening to watch the videos, etc., and the bundle offer he'd like to get. But would it not make sense right now, like with the way the situation is, or is there stuff there that they can be researching and learning and watching videos before the tennis comes back? This is a good opportunity to learn, isn't it?
Absolutely. There's loads of stuff to go through there. There's plenty of videos. I said the YouTube channel will help. That's open to everyone, whether you sign up or not. There's plenty to go through. And also, I think when you're trying to learn when you can see there are tennis matches on, and you're seeing Twitter and everybody else is saying how much they're trading and what they're making, etc., it's almost pressure to get involved before you're quite ready.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm a little bit biased, but I think it's a good time to get involved.
I totally agree with that, Paul. I think also what you were saying earlier, I think it would be a bit foolish to just open up, if you're a bit bored and you see a tennis match come on, to just start trading it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know. You got to understand. You got to have some opinion, whether it's your opinion from reading your email. People should be happy if they've read your opinion of what they think will happen. That's fine to go and trade that opinion, but they've either got to have that or their own opinion of what's going to happen. You can't just open up a cricket match, a tennis match, a football match, and just start trading it blind without having some concept of what you think's going to happen.
Yeah, what I find is, I agree, you've got to have an opinion. And on matches where my opinion can even be wrong, and any loss, if I therefore make a loss, it's smaller than if I enter a match without an opinion, because you think you're always second guessing which way it's going to go. Whereas if you have an opinion as to how it's going, if it doesn't go that way, you get out. So having that opinion controls your losses as well.
Definitely. So we did cover this earlier, but let's reinforce it again. Would it be fair to say that one ebook does not make you a trader, but gives you the tools? It's trading hours that make you a trader. It's the experience, isn't it?
It gives you a start. It speeds up your learning process. I've done it, I'm sure you did initially, by trial and error.
That's exactly why I wrote the books, Paul, because what took me 4 years, people can now learn in 4 months.
Yeah, there's nothing stopping other people doing the same. People don't want to wait these days, which I totally understand. And if there's information out there that's going to speed up and save you 6 months of trial and error and the losses that go with it.
We also know the mistakes that we made when we were starting out. Why, like you've just said there, I used to back after a break. Well, now you can put in your book, do not do this. Saves the guy doing it. You might have done that for 6 months before you realise this isn't a good strategy. Yeah. So what we're doing is helping them to do it, which brings me on to another point is I get a lot of criticism for writing the ebooks, and the common thing I get is, if you're so good at this, why are you telling everybody why you're writing books? I do it to help people, because it took me 4 years of making mistakes before I got any good at it. And then it took me another 4 years to recover the money that I'd lost doing it, to the point now where it's so consistent, the process is so refined, I can now teach them my process. I can't give them the discipline to stick to it.
No.
Still have blips, but that's why I did it. And I guess that criticism's been leveled at you. If you're so good at trading tennis, why are you writing an ebook and having a membership club and wasting time helping all these people? What's your answer to that?
I've never really understood. I mean, if this person was going to be a financial advisor, their advice would be, whatever you do, limit your income. I don't get it. Why? Well, I mean, how many people that work Monday to Friday would go in to see their boss on a Thursday afternoon to say, I've made enough so far this, mate. I've made enough money so far this week. Tomorrow's on me. Don't worry about it.
Well,
you make as much as you can from the situation. You're not ripping people off. You're providing something of value. People don't have to take it. People can ignore it and do it themselves. I don't see the logic in limiting your income.
Well, most smart people.
You never know when Betfair is going to shut down in this country.
They like most people, have multiple income streams. It's like, take Gordon Ramsay, for example. He's got his restaurants, he writes books, he's got video shows. If he's such a good cook, why is he doing all these kitchen nightmare shows and stuff?
He should be doing it for free.
And, I know it's a very sore topic at the moment, but Richard Branson, he's got trains, planes, record labels, everything. John Lewis, should they only sell refrigerators because they're so good at it? Should they not sell TVs and sell other stuff? So I try to help people, and I can't answer emails 24 hours a day. So I wrote a book. Said, if you want to know everything, there's the book. And you've done exactly the same thing. So we've got a couple more here. Can you recall your favourite ever trade from Jeremy? What's one that sticks in the mind that you think that's a cracker? It's hard, isn't it? Because as soon as I done a trade, I forgot about them. I can't tell you what I did yesterday.
I get people emailing me asking me about, oh, I've just watched this particular video. Can you tell me what you were thinking when you did this? I'm like, no, I'm going to have to watch it. Probably, I don't actually remember the process of it, but it actually wasn't tennis. It was 2 IPL matches. I traded the 2 matches one particular day. Did they have it in South Africa one year?
Yeah, there's the Ram Slam in South Africa, yeah.
That's the first time I'd even tried it, and I went a little bit nuts, and I made 900 quid on both matches. Wow. And I thought, stuff the tennis, I'm doing cricket.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that, does it?
No, I found that afterwards. Gave that back many times over, I think. That's the one that stands out. The tennis, it's the day job. You know, you'll remember, I had one where I made $3,000 is my biggest on the tennis.
Yep.
I don't particularly remember the trade. I'd have to.
But it might not have been your best trade, might it? It just
possibly. It just everything went as I expected it. It just worked out that way. It wasn't because I was particularly trading it well.
So I guess one question that's interested me is to get your perspective on. You're pretty well now a one sport trader, whereas I trade everything, but I sort of specialise, for want of a better word, in racing, football, and cricket. The football, because there's so much of it, and the Premier League, I've got an interest. Mm-hmm. The cricket, because I played it for 32 years, and it's my passion. Yeah. And the racing, because it's on every day, and it's just a churn. I can just make 10 to 50 pounds a race, churn, have a few 20-pound losses, but over a week, it's like a little corner shop selling the milk and bread. That's my racing.
Yeah.
So I do only the 3 sports now, but you're just tennis. How do you find just trading the one sport? I guess there's enough of it on that you're going all year round, aren't you?
Usually, yeah. As I say, it's the day job. I couldn't do it if I didn't enjoy it. So I'm not going to say for a second that I don't enjoy watching tennis, even researching tennis. I just love everything I do. I couldn't do it to the same level if I did other sports as well. No. It takes up so much time to do what I do. It's more than enough. Make a nice living from it. We've got a nice home life. You know, I'm perfectly happy with what's going on.
Like we spoke about earlier, you've got to have that work-life balance. And if you're spending 3 hours a day trading tennis, then you're probably spending 4 or 5 researching tennis, and there goes your 8 or 9 hours a day, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's all you can do. And then you've got to add in answering members' emails, talking to them, doing all the other stuff. It doesn't sort of stop. So one of the questions here, and I get asked this a lot, and there's no answer, and I'm presuming you won't know the answer, but see how you go. I get asked, how many of your members went from knowing nothing to trading full time? Well, we don't really know that, but how many guys are you seeing that you've had for numerous years? Because I've got a few dozen there that have been with me 6 or 7 years now.
Yeah, I definitely have people that have been around for that sort of time. I notice it more the ones who've taken the trading emails, because I have a record of who's a member each particular year. I know there's a lot who make a decent second income. I know there are some who've gone on for full time. It tends to be when they get to that sort of level, they don't need the support as much.
That's exactly what
I don't necessarily know that they're still doing it. I know they've got to that level.
The idea of my email service is people join it, learn what I do, how I do it, why I do it, and then they go off on their own and start researching their own games, start doing their own strategies. They keep in touch in our Telegram rooms and whatnot, and they stay in touch, but they tend to leave the service and move on. So there's a bit of a churn. I don't want someone to stay with me for 10 years. I want you to do it. Go and do it yourself.
I do find I get people who, because the advice that I'm giving is fairly uniform. It's got a certain pattern. It's got to be fairly concise because you're doing every match, researching every match. And a lot of people tend to think after 6 months, well, I can do this. I can do it on my own. So great, fantastic. I've taught you what you need to know. But then they'll come back after 2 or 3 months because it's not quite that simple. They'll do another 3-4 months with me, and then I've got what I need now, and then they're off.
So we've got a question here from 44. He's asking a few questions. How much quicker now is your research compared to when you started? I guess you've refined the process now. You know exactly where to go, what to look for. You've streamlined it.
it's changed so many times. You're always looking for the holy grail of what you're going to look at, what stats do you put together. I think the one that I'm using now is as close as I'm going to get to that holy grail. It's I do the what I call the base check, which I do on every single match. Takes less than a minute, and I can get an idea just from that as to how I'm going to trade the match, and then you look into the detail more. It's definitely more efficient, and it has to be because I'm doing every match every day.
So is there one main strategy that you're using considerably more than the others, or is there just a suite of them that you just use applying to each situation?
I think once you get experienced at tennis, you don't necessarily use a set strategy other than you're looking for value. Unless you're scalping. If you choose to scalp the tennis, then obviously that's different. For me, I'm a swing trader. I'm just looking for players at value. So that's really the strategy.
Okay, so Jonathan's asked us, what's your idea of something to relax when you're not trading, and what's your weakness or your guilty pleasure, like cars, holidays? I know you love walking your dog, although sometimes your dog wants to go out and you really don't want to in the middle of winter. But what's your passion away from trading?
It is definitely the dogs. I got quite into dog training, which was a nice release, something completely different. From this year, I've knocked that on the head. I'm just concentrating totally on the tennis, but I've still obviously got my 2 dogs as well.
What dogs are they, Paul? What have you got?
I still got a Kelpie that you'll maybe be familiar of, the Australian sheepdog.
Yeah, the Queen's got them. Oh no, Kelpie, that's a corgi. The
No,
Queen's got corgis. You've got a Kelpie, yeah?
Cross with a collie, so he's a bit bigger, and also a trail hound. She's an ex-racing dog.
Oh yeah.
Looks very similar to foxhounds.
Yeah, I've seen a picture of you with her on Twitter. Yeah.
So I do a lot of my thinking on the dog walks, so that it works as well for this. But I just enjoy being out and about with them.
You need that mental release, don't you? 100%.
Definitely the grandkids.
Yep.
You know, when was the last time you played with Barbies?
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago when I did.
My girls are 13 and 12 now, so
yeah.
It was, for me, it was Monster High. My daughter was into the Monster High dolls. We had all the Monster High movies, and
ours are into Barbie. So when Grandad goes round, Grandad's playing Barbies.
Yeah, sensational.
You've just got to act daft sometimes, haven't you?
So, do you get away for holidays much, Paul, or are you just happy?
You know what? I think this coronavirus was my fault. We haven't had a holiday for about 4 years, and we booked to go away 1st of May. So sorry, everybody. That was my fault. I jinxed it.
Well, I've got one of those in my member. He's a guy called Mike. Whenever he puts a tip in our room that he's going to lay it, it just wins every single time. You can make a lot of money following Mike. Trust me. So Mickey's written, again, this is a question that's impossible to answer. I'm going to read it out, but mate, there's no answer to it. Both of you wrote books and do courses and had lots of customers. Can you confirm only 5% of people will be a consistent trader? I don't know. I've sold probably close to 1,000 books, but I don't know where those people are now. You don't keep in touch with them. You just learn stuff. They might all be successful, or none of them might be. I don't know. How do you find it, Paul?
Again, you only know from the feedback that you get from them. I don't get a lot of abusive feedback.
No, I get far more positive than negative. But we don't know, do we? People don't tell us how well they're going.
No, I mean,
they're making, or
most of the feedback I get is, as I say, positive, and they'll say, you know, I'm now able to trade profitably. It's all down to you. But there's got to be people. I get people who buy the trading guide, and I'll get an email from them 4 years later to say, "Oh, I've just realised I bought your guide. How do I get into it?"
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah.
You just don't know. I can't understand people who do that. But then I'm a Yorkshireman, and if you spend money, you want to get something from it as soon as possible.
The big thing for me with the In Running Guide is I put a link in it to our Telegram room. So I say, get the book, come and join us in Telegram. And I get hundreds of emails saying, I've bought the book. How do I join the Telegram room? And I say, mate, the link's in the book. You clearly haven't read the book.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, no, I got to the videos and started watching the videos, and I got, that was me. I'm so excited.
It'll be a link in the email they've just replied to.
I think I should have put the link for the book at the beginning rather than at the end, but they never find it. It's unbelievable. We got a few more here, mate. Time's running away with us. But when looking for games to trade, are we looking for games evenly matched so it swings back and forth regularly? I guess we've sort of covered that, but do you find that easier games to trade is when you've got two evenly matched players with a few swings, or a very one-sided match with your Nadals and that?
I'm looking for a player who is potentially going to go at least above evens, and I wouldn't say she. I trade mainly WTA. I'm looking for a player who's going to start slowly but fights back.
Okay.
That's the first thing. If I can spot a match like that, I'm on it. That's the one that's highlighted for me. Matches that are even can be harder to trade sometimes. I want to have a strong opinion who's going to win.
Yeah.
As I said before, and even if I'm wrong, that will limit my potential. If I'm going to lose, it's going to be less.
Bit more of a coin toss, isn't it? When they're when you got 195, 205, that's a hard game to trade.
Although then you're looking for the low lays when you get to the end of sets, because there's a good chance it's going to be a breakback. Yeah.
Okay. Now I've seen some of you, some of the stuff you put on the blog, because you do put out some stuff on Twitter and you know, as sort of marketing and that. Yeah. And I'm really quite interested in them. So just Gary's come in a bit late. Just again, he said now that there's no tennis on, sort of what are you doing? But you're not trading anything at the moment. You're not into dogs or horses, or you're just taking some downtime. Grandkids, dogs.
Read a few books.
Yeah, cool. Another one from Mickey. Again, we don't really know Mickey, but what's the more common reason why people leave? Well, for me, most people leave. They've learnt what to do and how to do it. They're going to go out and get on their own. Other people find that their job is just getting in the way too much. They thought that they could get my email. They're working full time, just put the trades on and go to sleep. But they write to me and say, Tony, I'm going to leave because over the last month, I've only managed to read your email 6 times. The other 24 times I never read it. I'm not getting the value from it. So there's various reasons why people leave, but
I think definitely the time involved, and you get that reason at different times of year depending where the tour is. So if the tour's in China and all the matches are starting at 3 a.m, obviously people get a bit peed off that they can't really get involved.
Yeah.
And if they haven't been doing it too long, they haven't really caught the bug, if you like. That's probably a bad word to use at the minute. Especially with China, isn't it? I didn't think that through, really.
Yeah, Chinese bugs. Let's leave them out of this.
That's the main reason. Or sometimes, especially if they've come with a real gambler's mindset, they just can't get past it. And you give them the advice.
It's hard to turn them back.
Very the advice, and just say it's just not working.
I struggled personally with the change from growing up in Australia, just with that punting mentality. You just had to, you could only bet on something to win. That was your only option. Yeah. And then you had to wait till the outcome had finished, the race or the match or whatever, to find out if you won or lost. We had no concept of value. But these days now with Betfair, you can now back to win, you can lay to lose, you can trade, you can scout, you can Dutch different things. There's so much variety. It was very hard. I found that I'd have this punter on one shoulder saying, stay in, mate, they're going to win. And this guy's going, get out, just take the money. You're going to win 90 quid now. Why are you staying in for the extra 10?
Yeah. I never really had that. My only, as I say, I did have the Betfair account and it was the odd 20 quid. But I certainly wasn't into it. I certainly wasn't reading forums or anything like that. It was just to make it a little bit more interesting if I watched a game on a Saturday.
So we'll just do a few more, Paul. We've got the advice to start trading to trying to win around 10% profit as a new trader. Is that also the case then that they should be looking to take a 10% loss if it goes against them?
Yeah, 10 to 20% it should be a starting point. See what you're comfortable with. Start at 10% if you feel like you're getting out too soon and the matches are then still going your way in the end. Move it to 20. The thing is, for me, I don't have a set figure. But when you're teaching someone how to do it, you need to put a number on it.
Yeah.
and that's difficult sometimes. You can't put a number on a feeling, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I find the racing, what I do is I'll try and win 10 to 20 a race. Usually if I get a tenner, I'll just take it, but I'm prepared to let it go against me for £20. But that's because I know that I'm going to win 9 out of 10 races.
Yeah.
So if I can win a tenner 9 times out of 10 and lose 20 on the other one, over the 10 races, I'm up 70 quid.
Yeah.
And that's the theory. That's why I'm happy to set my loss at double what my win is, because I don't get into that trade until I expect that price to go up. So if that doesn't happen, I'm prepared to give it a minute to come back, because I think if I just did £5 win, £5 loss, you'd end up chopping out of half your trades and you'd find you're only winning 50%. And
that's very much where I am as well. But to someone comes along, they haven't traded tennis before, you can't give them that as a starting strategy. You see what I mean? Because they've got to get consistent first before that can be the strategy.
Yeah.
You've got to put a number on it. So I said it 10, 20% as a stop loss. Okay,
so this is probably more for me than you, but what's your opinion, Paul, on setting targets and then stopping once you've got your target for the day? Say you want to make 300 in a day, your first 3 matches, you've gone bang, 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 3 cracking trades, you've made your 300. For me, I'd keep going. If I'm in the zone, I just keep trading till 5 o'clock comes. I trade time rather than profit and loss. I don't look till the end of the day what I've made.
I'm not a fan of targets. I think it can change the way that you trade the later matches if you do continue trading.
Changes your mindset.
It does. I think sometimes if there's something else I want to go and do, like it's a nice day and I want to go out with the grandkids and I can get £300-400 in the morning, I'll finish. Yeah. I don't feel I have to continue the next day. No. The reason I wanted to work for myself was that I had some flexibility. And I think if you're then tied to your desk constantly, you've lost some of the reason why you got into it in the first place.
Right, we've got a couple more here and then we'll wrap it up. Steve's asking, can we get a link to your base checks, or is that something for your members? Would they need to join up to get?
No, it's on YouTube. I'll send you that link.
Okay, so Steve, we can get the link to the base checks.
Best do himself a list.
He'll send me the link to that one video, Paul, because they've got, there's quite a few videos on your channel. So, yep, I'll get you the link to the...
it was a Geek's Toy as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the Geek's Toy one you're setting. So,
yeah.
So, Johnny's asked, what are the essentials that you use for your trading setup? So, it looks like you've got 2 screens there. You're using Geek's Toy. You've got your Trading Insights set website. You've got your Trader 24 for your in-play stuff. Is that it? What other essentials are there?
I mean, I've got 5 screens at the minute. You can only see...
Okay, 5 screens. Yeah, I've got 5 screens here.
You don't need 5 screens.
No.
That's pretty much it. You've got your trading software. You need a reliable scoreboard. I use Bet365. In-play stats, tennis24.com. Tennis Insight for your research.
Cool. Fairly simple. Just the last one, mate, before we wrap it up. How do you find mental fatigue? I know myself pretty well. I know when my mind starts to wander and I'm losing focus in a race, I know now, turn it off, walk away, have a break. Do you find that there's mental fatigue there, trading match after match after match, day after day?
Definitely. And like you, I now recognise it.
Go for a walk?
Yeah, or finish for the day. If it's really bad, if it's been a long couple of weeks or whatever, take the rest of the day off.
Right. Well, look, guys, if you haven't got any more questions, I'm going to let Paul go there. I'd like to thank you so much for your time. It's been great to catch up with you. As I say, we've sort of been in touch since 2008, 2009, and we've been on Twitter and sent messages, and I've sent you a lot of members and you've put stuff up for me, but we've never actually had a face-to-face. It's been brilliant to do it. So I'm going to send all these guys a link to go and get your tennis trading book. I'll see how my technical skills are here. Let's go and have a quick look. I can't do that because I've made you the host. I was just going to go and show them the website, but I'll send them a link.
Yeah.
I'll send you guys a link to this one, Paul's website. tennis trading guide. I think the website that you want is, let me have a look here. It is going to be tradesharktennis.com. I think it's just the website, isn't it, mate?
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, well, I'm going to get you to end this because like we did on the test, because you're the host. So Paul's going to end this now. Thanks very much, guys. I'll see you back at Webinar Central. I'll get some links from Paul. I'll get this stuff up on YouTube today. I'll send the link to you, Paul, for your members. Thanks very much for your company. See you next time. And thanks, Paul, very much for your time. Bye for now.
Cheers, Tony. Thanks, everyone.